verses and thought we were still on 2. Otherwise, I would have gone ahead and started my way up here. Good to see all of you here tonight. We've got an interesting study on about friends. It is, like I told you this morning, every question you may have about life, how to live, about God, about every single thing, God has given you the answers in the Bible. And He tells you that the things that you have not been given the answers to, you don't need them anyway. That's Deuteronomy 29:29. So it's very comforting to know that we can turn to His Word and find out what it means to be a friend. Well, how is it that we take care of that? So let's turn to 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 10 through 8. Sorry, that was a throwback to this morning. 8 through 10. When I did 7 through 6 this morning, verse 8 through 10. Here we go. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others faithfully, administering God's grace in its various forms. Now, He's given us this information. Let's take a look at it and see what He has said here. First of all, He says, love covers a multitude of sins. What He's saying is that someone may not be perfect in what they do. However, when you love them, when you care about them, when you worry over them, when you're concerned about them, it covers a multitude of sins. My mother used to say that painting covered a multitude of sins. That was her idea. But you can kind of see the correlation here, that love actually covers a multitude of sins in the other person and even in yourself. Because you're going to have issues that are prominent in you. And when you love someone and you love them completely, it covers those problems that you have, because you realize that other person loves you. And so he is trying to help us understand the importance of love. And remember, I don't care who you look at around on the earth, people love someone else simply because God has created us and has loved us. Because of that, we understand and we can grasp the love. And then He says, offer hospitality. Now that's interesting. Hospitality is where you're going to allow someone to live with you or to come and spend time with you. You know, when you bring somebody over to eat and they leave, and of course, if you're older and they got a bunch of kids, you're always glad when they leave. But you got to spend a while cleaning up, putting things back in order. But the thing is, hospitality is not an easy thing. To allow someone into your personal space is not easy. And then to pillage whatever you have. And to even be concerned about whether or not they will take something that was of value to you and it's just gone. So He says to do this without grumbling. Isn't it an interesting terminology, grumbling? Not griping or complaining, but grumbling. It sounds like something that grows within you. It comes from somewhere real deep in you. we get all upset and start growling and so on. And he tells us, do it without grumbling. It shouldn't be something that interferes with the normal love in the house. And a lot of people have trouble when their in-laws come over to stay for a while. And of course, what you want to do is have a very comfortable bed when they first get there, and then keep changing it out until it gets really uncomfortable, so they'll leave. But that's not really hospitality. I remember there was a couple that came. He had been burned very badly, and they weren't the kind of people that I liked. But they had no air conditioning, and I knew he would just suffer. And so we had to put a special air conditioner in that window, and he laid in there, resting, not moving, because of the burns he had. And I think something had caught on fire on the stove or something like that. And they were a young couple, and so it was a chore dealing with them. But the thing is, it was what they needed more than anything else. Whatever happened to them, I don't know. I mean, I know they left for one day, and went back to their regular life after he healed. But it's hard to invite people into your private space. You can't do the same things you did before. You can't walk around in your underwear or enjoy watching what you want. You've got to watch what everybody wants, or so on. And so it can be an imposition. However, it should not interrupt who you are. That's where the grumbling comes in. It interrupts who you are. You begin to have problems with the issue and saying, man, if they just go home, we'd be all right, Or if they would just if their children would just leave everything alone, that would be nice. Boy, I tell you, the fun thing with little kids and at the house is blinds. I don't know why. It just fascinates them, but they've got to pull them down and bend them and break them or whatever. Just a real chore. And you've got to go over and pull the string down till they're all the way up where they can't reach them, and until you realize they got on the sofa to do it. So it's a matter of caring more about them than you are about you and what you have considered to be yours and what you're wanting to accomplish and do. And you have to really and truly, when you bring people over into your house and they're there, you have to put a lot of things that you may want to do, and you may have to put that on hold. When I had a business, and the business was in my backyard, I had a little shed there that I worked in to do furniture posts, and people would come over. You would have to go out and you have to stay in there and deal with them and enjoy them and all that, and then you might have to work all night long just to accomplish what you weren't able to do while they were there. And so when we think about hospitality, it's normally not a normal thing to do. It is beyond normal. And so we have to really consider under the heading of love. Because if we care about them, we love them, or we're doing this for God, we're loving Him, then our hospitality will be done without grumbling. And also, he says, do all you can for God to be pleased. So in everything you do, make sure that you can please God. If what you're doing, you're uncertain as to whether or not you're pleasing God, then you're missing the mark. You're doing it for yourself and not for Him. You're trying to make sure that you're the one that's being pleased and not Him. And understand, this is, like I say, in our free society, I was watching a video and this man from somewhere else was standing there and he was saying, please, please, I won't ever do it again. I didn't know the rules. Well, what had he done? Well, he had sexually abused several women over a period of time. And I'm thinking, that's the rules where you live? You know, surely you shouldn't be here. That's for sure. They should have taught you that there. And he was saying, please, please, I won't do it again. Don't take me in deportment. They said, no, you're gone, buddy. We don't need to have you around here. But when we think about how we act, we must think of it from the presence of God's eyes. How's he pleased with what we're doing? Does he see that we're doing it out of love? Does he see it's a sacrifice that we're doing for him? That we're considering for him? Is it something that we're doing so that they can know the gospel? Look what this says. Do all you can to preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words. Meaning, your actions ought to prove it. A person who loves and is hospitable without grumbling is going to be able to preach the gospel by their actions. This young couple I was talking about, we're so thankful to be able to have his bed right beside the air conditioner to be able to blow on him because it was hot summertime in Texas, down south in Texas. And it was very difficult for his burns. And they had no money. And their house was messed up because of this fire. And so it had to be taken care of and so on. So here's what you do. Do all you can to preach the gospel. With what? With your actions. And then with your words. And you've got to make sure that your words and your actions are in agreement. You remember the saying, you say you love me, but how you treat me proves you do not. So your actions and your words must agree. And God's saying, make sure that you're preaching the gospel with your actions, not just with your mouth. How you treat your spouse, how you treat your children, how you treat the friends of your children, or anyone come in contact with teachers or whatever. Unfortunately, we treat our teachers pretty bad today because of the way society has gone to where our child isn't wrong, the teachers must be. When I was a kid, I would say, but the teacher, and my father would say, shut up. And the teachers aren't at fault. You did this and you did that. I'd like to have some of that back again today. Might have some better children. And then, so not just love and hospitality, but, let's read this. Do all you can by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. That's a pretty power-packed little sentence there, isn't it? And the key word there is you can. Will you? That's the question. So then we're going to look at what is friendship, or do friends care? Let's take a look over at Job, the book of Job, not the book of Job, but the book of Job, and in chapter 6. Job is a book right after Psalms. And Psalms is in the middle of your Bible, so if you open your Bible to the very middle and start going back to the left, you'll be able to find it pretty easy. In Job 6 and verse 14, look what he says here. A despairing man should have the devotion of his friends. even though he forsakes the fear of the Almighty. Listen to the words he uses. A despairing man, a man in trouble, needs the devotion of his friend. Look at the words, despairing and devotion. And if you have friends that can pull you out of this despair, you're very fortunate indeed. There are times in this world that you will be in a situation where you hope you have friends who will come when you need them. I like this picture because there's one guy against what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 7. And I don't know what that guy over there is reaching back for. Is it a gun, a club, a knife? I don't know. But wouldn't it be nice if you just called some people and here they come to be able to help you out? The devotion means that you're concerned about your friend. When a man's in trouble, it's something he can't seem to handle by himself. And so he turns to friends. Look at this guy trying to pay his bills, trying to figure out what to do next. And he's probably at the end of his rope and he can't seem to hang on and he needs someone to help him. I remember a guy in Arkansas, I went to church there. Can't remember the name of the town right now. But anyway, it was a big church, and they had a guy who ran his store was a rent-to-own store. They used to have those a lot. They still have, but they're not as prevalent as they used to have. When I first started writing to Valentina, she was on the internet. I went down and rented a computer, rent-to-own computer, so I could talk to her and be able to get to know her. But he would come to church, and sometimes I was fortunate to be there when the elders would beckon him to come to them. And when they did, he would tell them about somebody in need. And I don't know of a time he ever said no. He always gave. And you know good and well he wasn't going to get it back. He wasn't going to be, it was going to cut into his own finances. But he had designed for himself business where he not only could give to someone if they needed, he could even hire them and give them a job where they could be paid on a regular basis. And you know, people who are worthless, they're going to prove themselves unworthy to be on a job. And we really don't know. There are a lot of people that we as a church have helped down through the years. We don't know where they are or how it has mattered to them or whether or not they were able to continue their life well. All we know is that we help them. And so a man in trouble needs this devotion of friends. And who's a better friend to you than those who are a member of the church? Because they understand you, they understand where you're going, what you're hoping to accomplish. And this is why we have potlucks, which I thought was next week, but now I see, and because it wasn't the 5th week, it's the week after that. But that's why we have potlucks. And so we'll sit around and talk with each other and be able to get to know each other and their problems and their needs and their hopes and their dreams and what they're trying to accomplish and so on. You just can't know people unless you're their friend. You just can't. Well, a friend is one who is always about you, not about themselves. Someone who's always about themselves is just selfish. And they usually don't have friends. If they do have friends, it's because they're all greedy and want something from that person anyway. Prestige, or to fit in, or money, a job, or whatever it may be. So this is our responsibility to be a friend, to be a friend, someone who is considered a friend. Now you can have a lot of acquaintances. How many friends do you have? Friends are rare because they're people who will drop what they're doing and help you. Come and help you do whatever it is you need. And then we see a friend recognizes the despair of hard times. He recognizes you're not right. Something's wrong with you. Something is not working out with you because you're in despair. You're not smiling. You're not here. You're having trouble. Something is bothering you. And how would they know that? Because they've known you all along. And it's because you've had hard times. And you know, anybody goes through hard times. Don't you hate to see a sign like that on the road? I was talking with Gary just this morning. He was talking about going back and forth to Portland for his procedures, which can mean anything. And he said then they come back, and when they got to the construction site there near the trying to think how to say it without saying dam, but anyway, near the dam. And he said the problem that they had, they're just inching along because people would not allow somebody else to move over in front of it. And just think about that kind of attitude. But there's hard times, and our nation's been through hard times. We've had times where people were completely destroyed in this world, in our nation even. And look how skinny that lady's legs are. Look, skinny as a broom. My goodness. So, hard times are tough on people. Have you ever heard of pounding? Anybody ever heard of that? Used to, every so often, have a pounding. And what we do is we'd bring food up in bags, and we had a grocery list on the bags, and you'd buy whatever the list is and put it in the bag, and we'd put it up on the pulpit, not on the pulpit, but on the stage up there, so that everybody can see that it was done. And then on Monday, people would come and they'd be given the name of people in need, and they'd go out and take the bags of 2 bags, which one thing like dry goods or something like that, and the other may have been like a canned ham and you know, some dessert things and whatever. And take them out to the people and deliver to them. They didn't even know what was coming. Hard times. We need somebody like that. Somebody who comes and all of a sudden we have groceries in our pantry, and we're not as much in despair anymore. And then he tells us to be a good friend, understand even if that person is forsaking God. Because you know, there are times when you say, Hannah, I'm just all alone here. I prayed to God. It doesn't seem like God's listening. Everything I'm trying to accomplish, I can't see that God's helping me in this. In fact, I'm having to take and do something I don't want to do in order just to stay alive. And these people will say, does God not care? Well, what do you do when God doesn't care? You have good friends who come along and understand that you're mistaken about your opinion of the fact that God doesn't care, because you have so much hard times on you that it's put you in despair and you can't see God for all the problems you have. That means you're looking at yourself as opposed to appreciating what you have. You know, we have we live in a world that just a few years ago we didn't have. If you want a hot bath, you had to heat water up, carry that pot in there and pour it in the bathtub. You had it. If you didn't, it was just a round tub, and you stand in it and wash yourself off. And remember that in the kitchen. And or we not only have water, we have good water to drink. We have refrigeration. So when we buy food, it doesn't go bad. We have air conditioning. We have toilets in the house. They used to be outside. And if you didn't have a pretty hole, you had a pot you had to clean out every so often. We don't realize how fortunate we are. But when we think God doesn't care, the thing we need to do is turn back to gratitude, to realize the blessings we have, to understand how truly blessed we are. Here's what a good friend does, is there for you no matter what. Even if you made a mistake that he had told you about, don't do this. Is someone whose company you enjoy, is someone who doesn't judge you, someone who is loyal, doesn't put you down or hurt your feelings, someone who laughs with you, is kind and respectful to you, is trustworthy, and tells you the truth. Now, we're not talking about, does this dress make me look fat? We're not talking about that. I usually say something, well, I don't like that color on you, or something like that. But you know, doesn't put down people when your feelings are hurt. I remember going to a church where one of the elders was very wealthy. We knew he was a multi-millionaire. And when people came in the church who had problems, he would gripe at them for mishandling their money, because he had done a good job with him. He couldn't fathom somebody who didn't do a good job with him. You say, well, what are you doing there? This isn't good for you. No, we want someone who doesn't put you down when you're hurt, doesn't laugh at you, but laughs with you. Helps you see the good, funny stuff. Helps you understand. And hey, a good friend will bring you to church. Make sure you're there. Make sure you're with those who will love you. Let's take a look at our last point here, which is in Proverbs 27. I love this verse. Proverbs is before Psalms. I'm telling you that because I keep forgetting, and I was going the other direction. Verse 20 and verse 17. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. So here's what we do. You say, well, that's an awful simple verse, GW. Yeah, but it said an awful lot. What it said was, you need friends. In fact, you need good men who will make you better. They'll expect you to be better. They'll expect that out of you. What we want is someone who is going to expect you to overcome, expect you to grow, expect you to become someone great, expect you to accomplish whatever it is you're seeking to accomplish. Someone who is saying, you can do this, and you say, yeah, but it'd be easy if you did, but if I did it for you, that doesn't help you. I already know how to do it. You need to do it yourself. A good man makes others even better. So what do we want to do? We want to have some good men around us. Or ladies, we want to have some good women around us. People who will, when they gather, expect us to be better and better and better. Someone who doesn't say, oh, he's enough, just let it be. No, they expect you to be better and doing what is right. You know, anytime you have a job means you've got to do something that the boss doesn't want to do or can't afford to do because it takes his time away from doing his job. And so you go to work at that job and you may get fed up with it. But what you can do is you can see how you can do that job better. Do you have everything in order so you can accomplish things as you go? Are you learning how to put your hands and work and to do? Oh man, one of the worst things I had to do in furniture upholstery was to start a tight seat. In other words, in a sofa where it didn't have cushions but it had a tight seat. And so you're going to wind up with your center off center, or if it is in the center, you can't get your ends to look without wrinkles. And it's different. I mean, by the time you get to the edges of your seat, it's totally different. You're pulling off a lot more fabric to keep your line straight on your seat. How do you do that? Had a lady come to me one day and she said, actually I went to her, she said, I really need to have these seats done. And I looked at them, I said, well, they look good. Did you do them yourself? She said, yes. And I said, I'd be happy to do it. Here's what it costs. You know, at the time, I think it was $25 or $35 a seat. And they were pulled down tight with a cord around them. And she said, do you have a special machine that does that? And I said, yes, ma'am, I do. I said, it's these. And the problem with it was, she would get so frustrated, she couldn't do what was right. So I brought them back, and they were pretty well perfect, matching. Each one had a floral bouquet in the center. They all looked the same. And you know, my opinion was, what if you were going to have a family gathering and you put all the seats in the living room, would they all match? I think that's the way it ought to be. I mean, if they're around the table, you don't know whether they match or not. And are they going to fit together? And is this going to make you proud? And so I set about to accomplish this. So I take it back to her, and she's going to screw them down. And I take it back to her, and I set them there on the counter, on the bar, or what you want to call it, in her kitchen. And she said, are you sure you didn't have a machine? Because she couldn't pick any of it up, and it was in perfect. And let me tell you, here's the key: constantly improve yourself. No matter what area we're talking about, your kitchen, your workspace, now I'm not saying your workspace has to be clean or perfect. But it ought to be where you know where every tool is and you're putting it back after each use so you can be more efficient the next time. You ought to be able to know what works, what doesn't, and not try the same thing over again with disastrous results. You ought to be able to move on, to be able to grow in every single way so that you're better and better and better. And this is what friends expect of you. You see them, they're doing well, they're going to make you want to do well. Even if their job's not the same, even if they don't wear the same kind of clothes, but you want to begin to emulate them in what they do. So iron sharpens iron. Look at this picture here. You see that rasp that he uses to sharpen his blade? That rasp is made out of iron as well. And it sharpens that knife so the knife can do its job. A friend sharpens you so you can do the job of being God's warrior and God's worker and God's man. Iron sharpening iron. And then he says, have good people around you. If you're going to have, if iron sharpens iron, you're not going to use concrete or something else. You know, you can go out there in the woods and you can find a stone, and you might be able to get a good edge on something that's dull. But the best thing is a file that you can use to file it up nice and smooth. Then you can use a stone to take away a real fine stone to take away the lines from the file. When I worked as a lineman, every week we would hone our hooks down, and we'd make sure that they were sharp and ready to go into that wood so you wouldn't peel out or fall down. And then we'd take a little stone, I still have it, and that was back when I was in my early 20s. And you take that little stone and you go over it and take away the lines so it wouldn't grab when you wanted to pull it out of the tree, the pole. It was a tree at one time. So have good people around you. Have kind of people who will expect more from others because we would be willing to do that much for them. Expect your friends to give to you. Expect your friends to come when you call, because that's what you would do for them. You've got to be a good friend for them to be able to know what a friend is. In another town, there was an older lady. She desperately wanted a friend, but she didn't know how to have a friend. You know how you have a friend? You be a friend. And a friend is all about the other person, not themselves. In all reality, nobody wants to hear your problem. But a friend does, so they can help. And they're not telling you their problems. And so she would come and butt in, like we were having a conversation, like 4 or 5 guys and people together. And she would come and she'd butt in, and she'd talk real loud and try to manipulate and take over the conversation. And then she wondered why she didn't have a friend. She didn't have a friend because she wasn't disciplined enough to be a friend. So you want people who expect more from you, and you want to be able to expect more from them, to make them a better friend, to make them a better person, to make them someone who is great. This one, I don't know about the girls, I don't know why they're there, but I like what it said. Good friends are like stars. You don't always see them, but you know they are always there. Somebody you may have to call and you haven't talked to them in years, but you know they're still your friend. You know they're still for you. Like stars, you don't always see them. You need friends because sometimes it requires more than one person to be able to help you. Do you see how these people are holding each other to be able to pull him up from where he is? One guy would be pulled off of there by the lower guy. Hard times will always reveal true friends. Not those who call themselves your friends, but those who are your friends. And then lastly, have you some inspirational statements around that will encourage you. You know, statements that are important to you, like this one. all things are different before they are difficult before they are easy. One of my favorite that I heard years ago and I repeated is, it may be obvious to you, but it's amazing to somebody else. Go back to that lady who was trying to do her seat cover. If she'd let me show her, she would have been amazed, but it would have made it easy for her. See what I'm saying? Or maybe this statement here, all our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. Walt Disney said that. Or maybe this one, it does not matter how slow you go, as long as you do not stop. Or maybe this one, you can do anything you set your mind to. Do you think Benjamin Franklin was the source of that? Oh no. Do you know who said that? God did. You know where he said it? He said in Genesis 11 verse 6, look at this. Behold, they are one people, they have the same language, and that is what they began to do. And now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Did you hear what is within you? Can you imagine how great a friend you can be to others when you have these kind of inspirational things? One time I went to his business. I'm not sure what they did there. But I went there and they asked me to come in, and they had a really big room, this humongous room, cut up with little cubby holes and stuff where people worked. And all around on the walls, in the bathroom, up the stairway, everywhere the owner had put inspirational sayings. What was he doing? He was trying to make them better than they were. Because if they're better, his business is better. If they're unhappy and they're complaining all the time, his business is going to go down. And who is the best friend you've ever had? Well, it's Jesus Christ, of course. So you want to be a friend like he is a friend. You want to have a friend and be a friend. You want to be the one who challenges them to grow, and you want to be challenged to grow yourself. You want to be friends. You want to have friends. You want to be connected with other people that are like-minded and are going to do exactly the same thing. Now, you may not have the same interests. You may not be the same people. You may not do it all the same, but they're getting better and you're getting better. You're both helping each other to grow. And that's the lesson. Be a friend, as Christ is a friend. If you have a need, you can come forward as we stand and we sing this song together.